Hey, welcome to the introductory series in Python, and let's kick it off by learning how to download and install Python in our computers. The easiest way to do this is to go to anaconda.com, go to downloads, and download the software, and then install it in your computers. Because instead of going to the hassle of downloading Python separately and then the IDE separately, once you download Anaconda and once you install it in your computer, all the things that is required for you to start programming in Python from an IDE to Python language itself will be available in a single location. Before we head on to learning how to launch Anaconda and do coding in Python, let's try to understand why Python has become so famous in the current context. It is simply because Python is a high level interpreted language, which makes it much more closer to humans than machines, which means it's going to be much more easier for us to learn coding in it, as well as it's much more versatile when it comes to its applications. So there's a lot of applications where Python is used, such as in the realm of data science, which is the most famous one. But you can also do web development, to API building, to software development, to quantum computing, mathematical computations, and all sorts of things using Python. And why it is so famous in the realm of data science is because most of the uh, most of the open source libraries that is required for you to carry out data science related activities such as visualization, building machine learning models to neural networks, managing data, ETA process, all of these are currently written in Python. Thus, a lot of people who are in the data science field tends to learn Python simply to make use of those free open source software and libraries. So that is basically an overview of Python and why it has become so famous. Now let's jump in to the other parts of it. So once you download and install Anaconda, there are two ways that you can launch Anaconda using your computers. One is to use the Anaconda Navigator. And once you click on this, you will come across this sort of a UI. So this UI is basically a centralized system of everything that is required for you to start programming in Python or to do your data science projects. So as you can see, some of these are already available, but some has to be installed for us to launch through the navigator. And IDEs like Jupyter, Spyder, VSCode, PyCharm is kind of embedded into this UI so that we can immediately launch it when we want to require. Um, as we discussed about IDEs, let's try to dive a little deep into what an IDE is and talk about some famous IDEs that is used by Python programmers. So what is an IDE? IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, which is basically a software tool that is being used by developers to write, edit, test, deploy, or debug their Python programs or any coding program that they have built in even in different languages. But there are several famous IDEs that is available for Python developers, and those are you have Jupyter Notebooks, then you have Google Colabs, which is similar to a Jupyter Notebook, but it is hosted in Google Cloud system so that you could run programs without using your own computer's resources. Then you have Spyder, which is also a really wonderful IDE that is available in Python. And another one is Visual Studio Code, which is one of the most famous IDEs that is out there for any developer of any programming language. But there is other IDs like PyCharm as well, which is similar to VS Code, but is much more dedicated towards Python developers. So these are a couple of IDs, and let's try to explore a little bit about Jupyter Notebooks first, and then move on to other IDs that is available in Python. So one of the most famous IDEs for someone who is beginning to code in Python is the Jupyter Notebook. And as I said, there are two ways. Instead of using the Anaconda navigator to launch it, you can also use the Anaconda prompt. So this is basically like a command prompt, but in an Anaconda environment. And by typing Jupyter Notebook in this, you can launch your Jupyter Notebook. And I always find it much more convenient to use this simply because it's much more faster than using the Anaconda Navigator. But even through the Anaconda Navigator, you can launch your Jupyter Notebook. So once you launch your Jupyter Notebook, you will see this sort of a UI popping up, usually in a browser. And what you can do is you can navigate to your folder that you want to have your project in. So let's say, for an example, I go to Documents, I go to Projects, I go to PyData, YouTube channel, and I go to the Introductory series. So now you are inside this particular folder, and how you create a new notebook is you go to New and you go to Python 3 kernel, and that will create a new blank notebook for you to start coding in. And one of the cool features here is that you can change the name of it. So let's say this is Introduction to Python. And now this will be the name of this particular notebook. And cool features are that you can execute a code cell by cell in this particular notebook. Uh, I mean, if you want to, let's say for an example, if you want to say print hello, and if you want to run this and take the output immediately, Jupyter Notebooks allows you to do that. And that is a good way to start learning and to understand exactly what is happening within the Python code if you are a beginner in encoding. But if you are someone who is at a sort of an intermediate level where you know certain syntaxes and you have done certain projects in Python, I would suggest you to go to a different IDE like Spyder or VSCode simply because you will have to manage folder structures within it. And in Jupyter Notebooks, it's very difficult to manage those folder structures. But one of the core features of this is that, as I said, if you were to present your idea or if you were to present a machine learning model or to visualize data, this is the tool for you because it allows you to run cell by cell. So how you do that is basically you go to the cell and you can click run here, which will run and give you the output immediately. Or else you can do, let's say, print hello world, which is the most famous set of strings that is there when it comes to programming. You can, instead of using the run button, you can also use the hotkeys shift plus enter to run it as well. And if at some point, if you want to add another cell in between these two cells, you can just click this insert cell below, and it will allow you to insert another cell. Let's say that I want to move this to the first cell. You can do that by the use of this arrow keys like this so that it will be in that particular order. Another cool feature of this is that you can add markdown titles and markdown diagrams, and you could edit the entire notebook using markdown so that you could make the notebook much more presentable. Let's say for an example, you want to add a title called uh, printing hello world. And how you do that is you go to the cell and then you select markdown, which will convert this cell into markdown context. And then you could add a title in markdown language like print hello world. And once you run this, it will print the title. So then you can, move it up by the use of the arrow keys, and this will allow you to make your entire notebook much more presentable, as well as you can divide it into different sections so that if in a case where you're trying to present something or to illustrate something, it adds a little bit more structure to it. So learning Markdown is very simple. It's not that complicated. Just go to Google and you can find out the syntaxes that is used. And what it allows you in brief is that you can add titles, you can add sections, you can add diagrams, you can add videos, and all sort of things to your Jupyter notebooks. So that's another advantage when it comes to using Jupyter notebooks. Another IDE that is available in Python is the Spyder IDE. The cool thing about Spyder IDE is that it is completely built by Python. In the sense, everything that you see here, the UI, and all of this is actually built using Python. And this is, maybe we can consider this to be an upscale of the Jupyter notebooks. But one thing that you can do is you can write an entire script here and then execute it. And a good thing about this is that you also have the ability to manage folder structures, which is not something that is easily available when it comes to Jupyter notebooks. But this can also be used as a notebook sort of a way, simply by, let's say that I want to print again hello world, right? And if you want to separate this, and if there is another print that comes saying hello, just hello, and if you want to run these separately, you can use hashtag plus the percentage marks, and this will make this particular set of codes a single cell, and the bottom part another cell. So that is available as well in Spyder. But if you're trying to build APIs, or if you're trying to build these massive systems, best to go to an IDE such as Spyder, or as another good IDE would be VS Code. Because if you look at VS Code, you can see that you can manage folder structures like this, and you can import folders, import different modules from different Python scripts, and all sort of things can be done in VS Code. Cool thing about VS Code is that it is not just limited for Python, and it is the most widely used IDE that is freely available. Um, Pretty much every programmer uses it because it has extensions that can be added to enhance your coding game. So if you want to just code in Python, you can do that. Or else, if you want to mix it with JavaScript, React, or some sort of another programming language, you have that capability as well, because this is a very versatile IDE that allows you to code in different languages, and it has extensions that can act as assistants for your coding game. So that's another IDE that is available. Apart from that, you also have PyCharm, which is a dedicated Python IDE that is widely used by Python programmers, simply because there is a lot of uh, extensions as well as add-ons that can be added for you to make your coding life a little uncomplicated. For an example, you can do debugging much more easily in PyCharm than in VS Code, uh, because it understands exactly how Python works, and you can pass arguments that is required much more easily in PyCharm than in VS Code. So if you're simply going to create an entire coding base using Python, and if your entire project is going to be in Python, best to go to PyCharm. But VS Code gives you that ability as well, because it has such a lot of extensions. So through this video, we learned how to download, install, and then launch Python using Anaconda prompt. We also discussed a couple of famous IDs that is available for you if you were to code in Python. And what the rest of the series will focus on is to help you learn Python step by step as a beginner, so that you will ultimately become a good Python programmer. So stay tuned and watch the rest of the playlist to learn more about Python.